Menopause. What do you know about it? Great conversation with Clarissa Kristjansson. She's a specialist. She knows a lot about it. She's written books. She has a podcast. She's gone through it. She has a very, very unique story where she found herself in her 40s, ignoring the symptoms and failing life circumstances, had a young child, went to another country and really had to address it. And now she turned it all around and she helps others. But the common myths, I happen to have a loved one going through it right now. What happens? Is estrogen or is hormones the solution? There's these organizations. There's one in Europe, North America, that just focus on menopause, and there's these conferences. Just a great conversation with Clarissa. If I told you that 1.2 billion women are in menopause right now, would you believe that? With our population right now, that's a significant amount. What can we expect as males, as friends, as siblings, as parents, as daughters, as sons, to someone who may be going through it? What happens physically, mentally? Exercise, health, diet, sleep are even more important than ever. But just a fascinating discussion on menopause with Clarissa. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I know you will as well. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. To this, Clarissa Christensen, thank you so much for your time today. With 1.2 billion women in menopause right now, what should we know? What should those that are not in it know about menopause?
Oh, that is a great question to kick off with. Well, firstly, I would say that it happens to 50% of the population,
Mm.
So it's important. It's not just it happens to women, it's going to
Mm.
affect all of us.
Yes. Yes, it certainly is. I have a loved one that's going through it right now, and she's having a hard time with it. But perhaps there's a lot of bleeding, and she's getting it looked at. But the common symptoms that we all hear about: the heat, the uncomfortableness, the kind of irritability. But their body is completely changing.
Absolutely. Our bodies are changing quite fundamentally. You might call it puberty in reverse.
Mm.
I'm not sure I you kind of agree with that 100% because we've got a lot of wisdom and we're
Right.
older too. But certainly our bodies are changing in ways our brains are changing. We will change in the way in which our body can both be good and bad, because we have more tendency to put on weight. We are more at risk for certain health conditions
Mm.
because we go through this life transition and we don't have the estrogen hormone in the same format that we had when we were able to have a child. So
Hmm.
there is a lot that has changed, but a lot of it's good too. I wouldn't say it's all bad, even if it can be challenging during the change.
Certainly, and your story is very interesting. If I have this wrong, please forgive me. But in your 40s, you were kind of in a hard place. Your marriage was in a good place. I think you went to Australia with your son, if I'm not mistaken, and you had to kind of start over. And you were ignoring all your symptoms of menopause.
That's well, I think I didn't know what menopause was. I
Mm,
mean, nobody was talking about that 15, 16 years ago. That was not, or maybe a bit more now, but that certainly wasn't a common conversation. It was whispered at best. And, I was in a tough space. And I would say that that level of stress makes your menopause symptoms
mm,
worse. And a lot of women are going through relationship changes, career pressure. Maybe we are caring, as I did for my mom who had dementia and then passed away. These things are very normal, and we can have children from quite small children. My son was
mm.
7, right up to people who are having, children going off to college and they're becoming empty nesters. So we are meeting a lot of life challenges alongside a big biological change.
Hmm. And the difference between menopause and perimenopause?
That's a great question. So people are very confused. We call it menopause, but really the stage where the hormones are doing their wild, crazy roller coaster and decline is essentially perimenopause.
Say.
And we're starting to use that term a lot more. Menopause in is one day, 12 months after a woman's last menstrual period,
I see.
after which we're postmenopause and stay that way forever. But we tend to use menopause as an overarching term, but medically we're in, three very distinct phases here.
And I'm just going to speak for myself. What is the best thing that we can do, men, to help this transition? That's not a good term. This phase. I don't know. Condition? No. Those are three
No,
poorly selected words. What can we do to help?
I think that, men first and foremost can learn as much as they can about it,
Mm,
go to resources, know what to expect. Because if, you know, you don't know at all what to expect, then, different ideas can be running in your head that your wife is maybe ill in another way. Maybe your partner is just being difficult for the sake of being difficult.
mm,
And that obviously helps with a lot of misunderstanding. I would also say make time to listen to
mm.
what she is going through. What is my partner experiencing? Without making a value judgment, this is what they're going through. And then, support. Sometimes it's just being there. Sometimes it's about taking off some of the load that feels too much. If your partner isn't sleeping very well, if your partner's struggling with the way they look, the way they feel, then be, supportive and nurturing and find ways that you can support them. I think each couple has their own way forward, but the more men understand and the more they can be supportive, I think that is critical.
And you make it clear that just general good health routine, whether in menopause or not, exercising, eating well, sleeping well, you know, helps through this. Uh, and it just makes sense because you certainly don't want to be unhealthy through something like this. So you have to kind of keep that way and perhaps stress it even more.
I agree. And I think we have to start making some adjustments. I
Mm,
mean, the foundation of all health is the good pillars, as you said: sleep, exercise, and diet. I think it's recognizing that what you could get away with when you were 20 and 30, we don't get let off the hook, whether we're
right.
male or female, when we get 45 plus. But it is important for women to eat a diet that is, we're seeing now that a plant-based diet, like a Mediterranean diet, in fact, a scientific paper was presented just this week at the World Menopause Congress in Lisbon, and they were absolutely clear that it is very important that women have a plant-based diet, because many of the common plants we eat, like legumes and soy, nuts, things like that, contain nutrients that we really need. They
Mm,
contain nutrients that look like estrogen. They're called phytoestrogens. They support a healthy gut, and a healthy gut will make sure that you process excess estrogen properly out of the body, because we don't want that recycling back in the body and
mm,
laying the foundation for potentially a hormone cancer. We want to
mm,
be also eating vital nutrients. Magnesium is very important, as are zinc and B vitamins, vitamin D, because we are going to see a depletion in bone strength and density.
mm.
We won't have the same capacity to care for our heart. So we don't want to be eating lots of sugars and fatty foods. We want to help our heart. Heart disease is the number one killer worldwide of women over 50. And we want to support a healthy brain, because 65, 70% of dementia sufferers, unfortunately, are female today.
Wow.
And so we want an anti-inflammatory brain, healthy brain, good diet. So diet is so critical for women to have at this time of their life. And then exercise, because again, healthy heart and also bone strength and density. There's a big shift from running and cycling and low density activities, nice as they are. Women are getting a recommendation, rightly so, that they should be taking up some form of weight bearing exercise,
Mm.
lifting weights, reps, and cutting back on some of the more stressy things like aerobics. You know, the Jane Fonda days are not quite
Interesting.
scientifically right anymore,
Hmm.
and we need to be thinking about that. We don't need to lift huge weights, but it is better to lift slightly heavier and for shorter times. I think we're seeing now, don't go there for 45 minutes to an hour with 2 kilo or 1 kilo hand weights. Go a bit heavier and go maybe 15, 20 minutes. That's
Mm.
much better for women. Squats are good, jumping's good, pelvic floor allowing, but we are definitely seeing a completely different set of recommendations coming from fitness experts.
Wow. Yeah, and I know that there's a lot of great science on just kind of body resistance, push-ups and, using your own body. And you don't have to go to an expensive gym or get all this equipment. You can really, really, and as far as the exercise, like Jane Fonda, the heart was in the right place. You're getting your heart, move, accelerated, your heartbeat increasing. But you certainly need to add weights. I know even males too. We're
Mm.
losing muscle as we get older, and it's very necessary. And that Mediterranean diet, it just keeps pointing back to that. It's just amazing how
Yeah.
that's so beneficial.
Indeed, Joe. And I think, it's been about 7 years, 8 years in a row that has been recommended in some form as the number one diet for everyone to take on board. Obviously, if you're not culturally attuned to a Mediterranean diet, you're going to take a version of that.
Right.
Not all cultures in the world are into olive oil and tomato, but some version of more plants, less meat, more fish, more legumes,
Mm.
more dense grains. That we definitely see that, and a good smattering of fruit in there too.
My father's side is Italian, and I spent a lot of time over there in southern Italy, and there's this misconception here that they're eating, pounds and pounds of pasta every day, and it's not the case at all. The pasta like once a week, and it's only, a small kind of handful, but it's a lot of fish, it's a lot of greens, it's a well mixed uh, uh, diet, and so beneficial. And everybody walks, and it's just very, very different. I kind of try to explain
Mm.
that here, and it's a bit lost. Even the kind of eating the rainbow, I hear that a lot now here, where your plate should kind of have all the colors, the
Mm.
greens, the purples, and that kind of visually helps as well. But diet, regardless of age, is again just points to better health.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that that's a really important pillar. And of course, the third pillar is rest,
Yeah.
which is not something that I think a lot of us in the modern age get enough. We are running on empty. And I think women in particular, I think I saw some statistics that women are adding up to 6 hours unpaid work on top of a whole day at work.
Wow.
And so we are really very tired. And when you're too tired, then it's hard to get to sleep. And, sadly, a lot of us think a glass of wine. I used to think a glass of wine, and I'm not against it, but it's not the most helpful thing.
Right.
And we can react quite badly to it in perimenopause for a variety of reasons. It can bring on a hot flash, it can bring on a night sweat, it can
Mm.
sometimes create a histamine reaction. So, yeah, it's not really our friend, and it's not the way to get to sleep and to relax. There are better ways: exercise, meditation, gentle yoga. It's taking some time out and winding down is really important.
And I heard you speak about the clear distinction between rest and sleep. I enjoyed that. Can you share?
Absolutely. I think we need to have quiet time, a little bit of time for this poor thing, our head, just to be quiet, to wind down the noise, and give ourselves 15 minutes, 20 minutes just to break, to gather yourself. Uh, Take some time out. Sleep's different. We want to be getting the best quality night's sleep we can.
Mm.
And having a lot of women I meet and work with 2 hours a night. We can't do that for very
Wow.
long. Or you're sleeping a couple of hours and then you wake half the night and then you fall back to sleep. We're exhausted. So, good sleep hygiene. And if sleep is an issue, then we do know that cognitive behavioral therapy, which is really great psychotherapy, is now absolutely proven to help women get better sleep and is
Mm.
recommended by the North American Menopause Society and other similar bodies around the world. And that will help women break patterns of behavior that really are keeping them awake at night. So I'm a big fan of that. Obviously, if women are having tremendous night sweats, then hormone replacement therapy can be so beneficial
Mm.
because that's one of its primary functions, to help control and regulate those centers in the brain so that we can sleep more peacefully. And if you're waking up and that's your issue, then you've got to find a way to address it.
Yeah, I thank goodness for one of the I just seem to sleep well at night. I hope that continues. But I there actually this week there was a couple things that happened at my career, at my office, where I had to limit the amount of sleep one night, and it really affected me the next day. And I remember thinking, people must function on this often. It's terrible. And I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't drink, I don't have any caffeine. So I just kind of use my own energy to bring it back up. You mentioned a conference, a World Menopause Conference in, I believe you said Lisbon, Portugal. And then you mentioned the North American group. I didn't realize these menopause conferences and groups exist. What is their edict? What is their function?
So there is, first and foremost, there is in a number of countries. In the US, it's the North American Menopause Society, and their job is about essentially, first and foremost, guiding clinicians
Hmm.
so that they produce guidelines of how clinicians should meet and manage menopause. They provide training and they give quite strong guidelines on how medication like hormone therapy should be administered in a way that is safe and correct according to the evidence based research.
Hmm.
So, the North American Society's first job is that. The second is to be a repository of knowledge and information for the lay public so that women can go there and look and see, oh, what can I learn? And they have little information and pamphlets and sheets. They're a little bit starchy, a little,
I see.
if I have
They
to
need some
say
punch,
that
really.
about them. But they are factually correct, and that is their job. And there are similar bodies in other parts of the world, like the British Menopause, and there's an Australian one. And so, they accredit doctors as well. And if you're accredited by them, you can say, well, I'm accredited. I know what I'm talking about. Then there is an international menopause society
Mm.
that is much more about research and pulling together more researchers and academics and doctors to talk about what's happening, what's the latest thing. They are linked to the World Health Organization as well. They sponsor World Menopause Month and World Menopause Day, and are really an overarching kind of body, if you like, for what's happening, and a guiding of where research funding should be kind of directed as well.
Hmm. And are you a member of these organizations? Do they take their boards? No, it's
No,
kind of,
they're
is
not.
it
They
private?
take clinicians. They're
Ah,
they're all about doctors. You can
I see.
sometimes
I see.
become a member of something if, for example, you were recognized as a certified psychologist, or maybe a physiotherapist, or that sort of thing, may be allowed to be affiliated. But myself, no, not as a health practitioner. I'm a mental health practitioner, but I'm not a clinical psychologist, so they don't accept me into the society, yeah, as such. I can do training with them,
Hmm.
but be a member, not really. No.
But you've written books, you've got a podcast. I mean, you're the most informed person I know. If that's a measurement, if you need a vote or something, I'm in. I'll vote. I don't know how what the process is.
Uh, I think they will gradually over time sort of open and broaden. I think they're becoming gradually more open to a more integrative approach. I think
Mm.
we've seen them begin to talk more about herbal medicine, acupuncture,
Hmm.
psychotherapy. So I think bit by bit, those sort of things that have been held away are coming in. And I think that's because, particularly in North America, there is a huge functional medicine movement that is very focused on the menopause area and are really picking up the slack that the clinicians, they're often not up to date, or they are quite resistant to medication or helping women. And I think you're seeing a massive growth of the functional medicine area.
What myths about menopause have been, debunked with these organizations and through research?
Yeah, good question. I think the biggest one has been around hormone therapy.
Ah.
So, for a long time, up until about 2002, hormone therapy was very freely given. It was mostly synthetic.
Hmm.
And a big study was undertaken to look at the safety of estrogen only and estrogen and progesterone. And somewhere in the middle of that study, data was pulled that was then found later down the line to be incorrect.
Mm.
And it sent out a message that hormone therapy creates breast cancer in women. And of course, instantly, this drug started to be removed. Women
Right.
started refusing to take it. And it's really taken almost, I think, close to more than 12 years
Wow.
for there to be a reassessment of what was actually said there, and that they revised the guidelines, and they're now saying, look, it is safe for women to take estrogen progesterone mixed. there's less risk for women. Obviously, there is more risk for an estrogen only, and that's only subscribed to women who've had a full hysterectomy. They were then sitting there and saying, now we can take it for longer. Because at one stage they were like, no, not more than 5 years. Now they're saying you can take it, recommended up to about the age of 60. They're not recommending older women because the risk increases, the risk for cancer and the risk for blood clots can increase.
Hmm.
But they have extended the length of time that women can be on hormone replacement therapy. So this is a very big turnaround from the societies based on a reevaluation of research.
Now, the hormone therapy, are they pills? Are they injection? What kind of treatment is it?
There's very different types. So generally now the recommendation is not to take pills,
Hmm.
because the processing in the body is hard on the body, and there's more risk there. Now you can have patches on the skin.
Hmm.
You can have gels that you can rub in. You just dose pump them and rub them in. They can be inserted vaginally as well. You can have implants. So there are ways where it doesn't go through the liver and to be processed, that is
Ah.
much friendlier for the body. So it's definitely mainly in some form of absorption straight into the bloodstream.
Because I think a common fear that we have here in the States is that, it eventually comes down to money, Clarissa. So we're afraid that, some of the practitioners that we see may have, may be incentivized some other way and they start prescribing things. And this certainly isn't all healthcare providers, but it could be. So there's so much kind of difference between what we hear, and we're afraid of taking one advice and not taking other, and there's just general confusion out there, not just in menopause but in many things. I
Hmm.
believe you're in Sweden, and it's a very different system there. There's a little bit more trust, correct?
I think that, yes, maybe, but not necessarily. I mean, Sweden's been slow to revise its guidelines. They only were updated this year, actually, fully.
Hmm.
And the kind of guidelines we see coming from maybe the British Menopause Society, because the UK is really taking a lead in this space, is that not every woman should be on hormone therapy. It's
Hmm.
not some sort of blanket medication and panacea for this. Its use is quite specific. It is not a preventative drug, but a treatment program that is over a limited period. It should be as low a dose as possible for as short a time as possible. There are doctors who would like to advocate it for life and this, that, and the other. But at the moment, the societies are very clear that if people really can't find ways naturally to do that, then they can be supported for a particular period of time, and that should be that, and then gradually taken off the medication. And that is very clear. There's also a lot of controversy around testosterone and
Hmm.
that's administration. There are lots of doctors who want to prescribe that. The societies, on the basis of a very well-known research called Professor Martha Hickey from Australia, are very clear that this is not the recommendation at this moment in time, and that the benefits are not clear.
Hmm. So again, you just should take the advice of your healthcare provider and hope that they're up to date and they're part of these organizations, and do the best you can.
Yeah, and seek out a menopause trained specialist, someone
Hmm.
who really knows what they're doing. Your local clinician may not have training. Even
Hmm.
your local OBGYN may not be a specialist. That's the
Wow.
thing to remember. Not all of them are, but find somebody who's this is their area, and go to that person and get the help you need. Don't be afraid to go to a functional practitioner, because they can also
Hmm.
be a clinician. And yeah, I think the my advice to women is, you choose how you want to go through this. There isn't one way or the highway, and we're not in polarized camps either. That's not helpful. I think women have to choose things. We don't want to suffer when there is treatment, but we don't need to take unnecessary treatment. Some women will go down a fully natural route, change their diet, up their exercise, practice things like mindfulness and relaxation, and they will go through it.
Hmm.
Some will have absolutely no symptoms at all, and we don't understand why. But the healthier you are, the better you're going to go through it. And there's help there if we can't do the journey on our own, however that help looks.
Hmm. And you work with women to kind of help them go through this.
I do. I work with women, particularly on the mental health and well-being side. That's my background. I work with mindfulness, and mindfulness is now increasingly being proven to be incredibly good for, obviously, stress, which will always make your menopause symptoms worse, for
Hmm.
anxiety, for managing hot flashes, for insomnia, and we're seeing that it can be very good for pain management and brain fog. So I support women who may be doing other things as well, such as working with a nutritionist or getting medication, but really helping that stress and psychological side, and sometimes a reevaluation of, well, you know, what have I been doing? What do my habits look like? What do I need to change? And sometimes mindfulness is a very good tool to gently look at where we are
Hmm.
and guide ourselves to a different space without beating ourselves up.
Yeah, Clarissa, because until this point, we've been talking all physical. We've been talking about medication and diet and exercise, but this is the first time in our conversation we're actually talking about mindfulness. I mean, how does it change? The my partner, my girlfriend, has friends that have had hysterectomies during menopause, and they said everything changed after that. That was the statement, kind of a blank statement, and I just think they mean mentally. I mean, what mental, you know, my goodness, we try to do our best as a male. I try to do my best to support, and we just have to listen a little more, like you said. But what's happening mentally to women during this process? Are they questioning their femininity? Are they? I know it's a blank question. Everybody's different, but what have you seen?
So, the most common things that I see and that impact the quality of women's life is anxiety. We're
Mm,
not expecting to see high levels of anxiety, panic attacks. We can experience low points. I mean, we are getting huge changes in our brain. And we know now that estrogen receptors in our brain and progesterone receptors in our brain are vital. They're
mm,
vital for managing the HPA, so our stress pathways, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal pathway. They are important in terms of our emotional regulation, which is why we say things like people are really irritable and sharp and
mm.
whatever. Well, that's because our emotional regulation can be a bit off. Brain fog is massive.
Brain
And there
fog.
is really good research that is now, putting the MRI scans and showing how actually fuzzy the brain can look
Mm,
during this time. Major centers of the brain really impacted. And that can rock our confidence as women. If you're a smart, sharp woman, like I was working with someone, she's a human resources director. She says, I come to meetings, I'm used to being, answering on the cuff. And she said, and I come to a meeting and I can't find the words. I go to a job interview and, twice in a row, I've not got the job.
hmm,
It's devastating for women. That women find themselves being said that they're not doing well at work, they're getting bad performance reviews, their concentration is low, their ability to focus on a complex project. It doesn't last. That's the good thing. And we see that brains upgrade post menopause once the hormones have settled to their new level.
really?
But it's very devastating for our confidence and our ability to function well. And we sometimes say, oh, it's like you forgot your keys. Well, no,
Hmm,
it's so different when your verbalization skills are gone, your memory's gone, your concentration is gone. You're not functioning at the same sharp level that you might have been in the past.
I keep on kind of having this vision of the salmon that kind of leave, this drive to, go towards the where they're born, and they go into the salt water, and their whole physiology, they're just driven to. This is a terrible analogy. I don't know why I thought of this, but their whole their whole body changes just to kind of get to that one point. Uh Terrible analogy. Has the pandemic, what we went through the pandemic, has that all helped the direction and the seriousness of menopause? Has it shifted it in any direction at all? Had any
That's
influence?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think on the one hand, it probably cut some slack when we worked from home.
Hmm.
You could sit around if you were having a really hot flash and or you felt like a bad day. The fact that you could be at home and or
Hmm.
maybe take a bit of a walk, take a rest, maybe
Hmm.
not have to, dress up and go out and put on stuff you didn't want to wear was probably great. But I also think that there was a
Hmm.
lack of support when you're not in the workspace. I think women ended up working incredibly extra hours, taking on a lot of family responsibility and working, which was actually very pressurizing
Hmm.
for us. I think we've seen during the last 2 years a tremendous increase in the conversation around menopause. Strangely, during
Good.
this sort of pandemic, post pandemic time, that the conversation is elevating worldwide. It's elevating in the US. It's in another space, and we've seen
Hmm.
more people coming out during this time. Celebrities talking about their experiences and getting behind and sponsoring and wanting to invest in menopause products and businesses, which is great, we're talking big celebrity names. We've seen Naomi Watts, um, Gwyneth Paltrow, Serena
Hmm.
Williams, really, really big names
Yeah.
coming out and saying, we're going to share our stories and we're going to back businesses that want to help women.
I heard you cite a quote where that, forgive me if I get this wrong, but out of all the activities in the household, 75% of them are conducted by the woman. Do I have that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, women on average around the world, if we want to take a glow, and averages are averages, but
Mm.
women are picking up a lot of care related duties with or without children. We're often
Mm.
responsible, and a lot of that is mental and emotional today. It's not grandmothers, scrubbing clothes and the physical work. We have gadgets and tools, and we have online shopping, but we are still in our heads thinking, I wonder if the car's insured. Have the children been to the dentist? Have we booked a holiday? And so we don't know how to let go.
Hmm.
And that's exhausting. I think there's a great book came out that about 3 years ago called Why Women Don't Sleep. And it was a New York Times bestseller. And the
Mm.
author, of course, has gone out of my head, my brain fog. But what we do see is that she really documented just how much we have on our plate.
Mm.
And so that is what's running in our heads in our own dialogues when we're supposed to be going to sleep.
And you decided to write a book where you interview people going through menopause, and even one male and his reaction. I wonder
Yeah.
why you took that on. Well, perhaps it's an obvious answer.
I think the answer was partly to give a very diverse insight into what's going on,
Right.
because I think it's right to criticize that this is still being predominantly uh, quite white, quite middle class, quite heterosexual in its
Mm.
dominant narrative. I think there's amazing Black African, Black American, Black British women here raising their own dialogue and starting to talk. But I felt that diversity is more than just our color, and it's more than just our gender. It's lots of different aspects. And so we had people from different parts of the world, people who'd had very early menopause, people who've had hysterectomies and no choice,
Mm.
people who have gone through this entirely with no support, who are much older than we are, and their experiences, so really saying there's a lot of diversity here, and in that diversity is also a male perspective
Mm.
on their experience, and from his perspective what he wished he had known.
Hmm. It just occurred to me that, female, homosexual couple, imagine both of them going through menopause at the same time. That must be something.
I would think so. I would think that was, quite an experience, but there is an evidence that they're more supportive of each other.
Right, of
Yeah,
course.
and that caused a bit of controversy, I know, when that came out in I think it was through the North American Society. And I sat yesterday on a diversity panel, and there was a transgender person there,
Hmm.
and he has been through menopause twice.
Wow.
Once when he was on the testosterone for his, obviously his hormonal change, and now he's off this and he's gone through it twice, and how that plays out to be
Huh.
physically a male but obviously still female in body was quite, an eye-opener for me, because that is not a world that I am deeply connected to.
Nor am I. Nor am I. Fascinating, Clarissa. On the podcast, we talk. Discipline comes up. I lost a lot of weight talking about health and fitness. I started my business and I did not take care of myself, and I found myself at a very heavy weight. And doctor said to me, if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate, and that's all I needed to hear. So, it took about a year, and I lost about 130 pounds. I believe, what's that? Maybe 55 kilos, something like that. But people ask me, how did I do it? And my quick answer is always discipline, focus. That's just something I wanted. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Clarissa?
Yeah, it does in me. I'm quite a structured person, and I think that um, that's kind of a little about my upbringing. I have a Swedish mother, so I
Mm,
get out of it. But I do think for me personally, I'm very committed to my exercise.
yeah.
I exercise every day in some form, and that's important for me. I'm pretty disciplined about my eating. I have worked with both a personal trainer and a nutritionist in the past,
Hmm.
because they really helped me, and they helped me correct and give me guidance to put things on track that had got a little off track. I obviously, as a mindfulness practitioner, I practice my meditation, and I have a daily 20 minutes of meditation practice. I'm currently training to be a medical Qigong practitioner. So I have my medical
Wow.
Qigong exercises to do every
Wow.
day, which is moving meditation. But 20 minutes every day just makes the day start right. And I think that that discipline creates some structure, makes you come back to basics all the time, because otherwise you can very easily drift off and forget. And I think if we my teacher says, make build your life around your qigong practice, not your qigong practice, around that, not your life fitting it in, sort of thing, because
Ah.
then it doesn't happen. If you don't do that at 7 o'clock in the morning, then by the time 11 o'clock comes around, you're going, oh, yeah, I'll do that a bit later. And then it never happens.
Mm.
And I think we can be that with our diet, oh, yeah, I'll be good tomorrow. I'll be good on Monday. And it doesn't. We have to have habits, and we have to build them small and build them up. So discipline matters to me a lot in my life.
Hmm. You mentioned Swedish mother. I'm unfamiliar. Is there a stigma amongst the Swedish mothers? I'm not familiar at all.
I think they're quite good. I think Swedish people are quite disciplined. And my
Interesting.
mother, I think there wasn't a lot of sitting and slobbing around and in
Hmm.
front of the TV. It was exercise, get up, move. You're pretty sort of big on that. If I look relative to growing up in the UK, where, fitness isn't as big a thing. Here, people are
Interesting.
out moving, keeping fit. And obviously, I lived a long time in Australia too, where there's a big emphasis on getting up and keeping fit. But yeah, definitely, my mother was all for, no sitting, move.
It's amazing how that changes just from country to country, close by. Here, there's not as strong. Well, I guess it depends on the household, but overall, we have a obesity and an overweight problem, horrendous here in the States. It's about 75% last I saw. So that needs to change. But that view on discipline in the Swedish household, I was unfamiliar with. And when it just comes to menopause, I mean, that's a very kind of wide horizontal question. I mean, discipline just varies on each person if it's necessary to go through and how to tackle those issues that it brings on.
Yeah, I think just having structure in this time is very anchoring, and I think one of the
Mm.
disciplines is always to keep tracking your symptoms, where you are, what's happening. There isn't a test. I know lots of people want to sell women hormone tests, and I'll get on my little
Uh,
soapbox here, and I'm saying they don't tell women anything
hmm,
because your hormones are changing all the time.
right.
One test looks like this, the other test will look like that. So actually, the way we know we're in perimenopause and we know when it's changing and what's happening is to be disciplined and write
Hmm.
down what's happening to you and track them. And that way we have control. We can look at the things that we might be able to manage and change. And yeah, there's a discipline in that too.
Clarissa Kristjansson, what motivates you?
I'm motivated by, I think, seeing women empowered
Mm.
and being able to self advocate. I think for a long time, we've taken whatever advice we're given, we've been allowed to be gaslit and rebuffed and walked away saying, oh, well, I can't do anything about this and resigning. And I think I'm motivated by empowered women. I'm 62. I know that women are now going to live to be 75, 80. I think, average ages here in Sweden is 84. In the
Wow.
US, it's about 80. We are seeing this time. We don't want the next 30 years post our menopause being over, that this is all downhill. We have so much to give, so much wisdom. We need it so much. We need women's experience not to be lost from our workplaces, from our communities, from our families. So I'm empowered that women go through this life transition really well, that they've got good platforms in health, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, so that they can actually, live an amazing life. Because right now, the quality of women's life as they age is not where it should be.
Mm.
So I really want to see that being something that is changed.
That's wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful. And how do you measure success?
I measure success from the feedback on my clients.
Mm.
When somebody sends me a message or they say, I listened to your podcast and I'm so grateful for that message, thank you so much for that. Or you get a note from somebody 2 years down the line, and they say, you really helped me over a difficult time. So I measure success by seeing that other people have made progress in their life. For me, it's not a monetary success. I think, yeah, or a possession based success. I have what I need for my
Mm.
life. I want to know that somebody's life was turned around by something, however small, and sometimes it is incredibly small. And if you just looked at it on the surface, but they took control and move their life forward. It's beautiful. I get quite emotional when I get messages like that.
I think a sign of a remarkable individual is, you know, you went through this, and many people, even myself, I went through the weight change, and I'm not, I don't teach people how to lose weight, but you took that. You said, okay, I went through this. It was difficult, and now I could help others with it. Many people will just kind of deal with it and move on. But you're the person who's turning it around and saying, I could help others and I could try to empower women. And I applaud that, Clarissa. It's wonderful. And I'm glad you're out there.
Thank you. Thank you.
And how can we get in touch with you? You've got a website, you've got books, you've got so much.
So, good ways to get in touch with me is through my website, which is my name, clarissakristjansson.com. Do connect through the podcast too. We have a weekly podcast. I interview phenomenal humans from
Yes.
around the world who talk about all kinds of aspects of menopause or share their own stories. It's called Thriving Thru Menopause. It's everywhere you get listen to podcasts, and we have a
Absolutely.
YouTube channel if you're a person who likes to watch a video rather than just listen to audio. Those are me. I'm on social media. You will find me Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. Who knows what Twitter will be like now? But
That's
I'm
right. That's right. As of yesterday. Yeah.
there
And
yesterday.
Clarissa, Clarissa, and Christensen, Kristjansson. I'll make sure I put that in all the show notes as well. Just spelled a little differently if you're just listening. But again, it'll be in the show notes. Clarissa, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this. I was very excited when you accepted this. And I hope one day, if I find myself there in Sweden, we can have a cup of coffee, I guess. I don't really drink coffee. What's the common drink there?
Oh, coffee,
It's
coffee,
coffee.
coffee. World's biggest
You're
coffee drinkers. We love coffee, and
that's yeah.
Americans like our coffee. It's brewed
Oh,
coffee. You get
is
it.
that right? Thanks again, Clarissa. You have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you, Joe.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.